What's up, guys? It is the Bad Wolf. Today, we are going to be talking about the IRS. Oh, IRS. Are you guys in jeopardy? Is King Cheeto possibly going to be taking down your little cabal, exposing the travesties that you have done to the American people while masquerading under the U.S. flag? Hmm, we shall see. Now, understand that when I say that the IRS is not an American agency, you guys can disagree or believe in whatever you want to believe. I mean, you know, so some of y'all out there believe in y'all baby daddies. All right, but for real, it's understanding that everything that's done here is either allowed to be done under the United States of America in our to be done in our jurisdiction, or it's a member of our family because they've registered. So a lot of what's going on here is not necessarily fraud. We just don't know how to do commerce. And we don't understand that in the great bubble, our American system allows for other bubbles, private bubbles, and whatever else. And whichever one of these that you plug into, okay, for instance, state or federal, army or this, make, whatever. Those are all different bubbles that you're operating in between, and you have the right to do so. So it's not that the IRS isn't a agency operating under federal jurisdiction, because they are, but it's the United States. And remember, there is a difference between the United States and the United States of America. Those are two separate entities for jurisdictional and legal purposes. So, cameras are looking a little fuzzy here. Let me see if I can clean it. Did he? No, did he? Just kidding. He's locked up as far as I know, right? He's still locked up. All right. So in this particular video, we're going to be talking about frivolous returns and the frivolous return program and doing the revocation of election. All right. So I've made one video on this before, and so we're going to say it again. All right. So for those people, do you have the option of doing a W8BEN and sending it in? Do we need to send in the revocation of election? Well, I'll tell you this. They don't want the W8BEN form unless they request it from you. Now, the shady part about that is that there we go. It's like a little kid at the counter, like, oh, there it goes, it's moving in again. Whatever. Um, they don't want the WAB unless they ask for it. And why do they do that? They do this because they want to be able to bother you. So you're out here, and if you look on the top of the WABN, it says straight up, do not send to the IRS because they want to have the ability to bother you sometime in the future when compliance goes, oh, well, Bob J. Smith over here and Lisa J. So-and-so haven't filed a return in some time. Let's see what's going on with them. Then they want you to pay for all the back taxes that they think or believe that you are responsible and owe them for. Because remember, the system, especially their system, is a dead system. So nothing gets updated unless you update it. Everything stays exactly the same. So if you fill out a 1040 the year before, they're expecting another one the next year unless you update them. So it's a wicked game that they play, and it took years to understand, overstand, and learn these things. So, should you send in your WABN? Well, I'm not telling you to do so, but it is their form. And though it says do not send it in, I've sent mine in, and many others have. Now, as far as the revocation, part two of the revocation, which is the actual forms that talk about your rights. At this point in time, I would tell you, educationally speaking, as all my videos, do whatever you want to do. You guys are grown, or you should be, that you should keep the W-8BN at home, a copy of it. Send a copy of it, and I would maybe mark on their edu or please update my account, and send that one in, or send it in as it is. As far as the documents, the court cases, the Supreme Court opinions on the subject, which are positive or main, it's the law. Okay, a lot of you guys don't understand. Some of you agents out there who watch, my videos and police officers, but you guys don't understand. Google this on your own. Is the Constitution the supreme law of the land? Absolutely yes. There's nothing higher than that other than God or / religious law. All right. God's law, number one. Religious is kind of like parallel, but can be looked at as supreme or higher. Now, so they don't want to be told you don't have to pay taxes. They really don't want to see it. So they may respond to you with no letter, a letter telling you to fill out this document if you believe you're a church or exempt or whatever else. And then the other one is going to be the letter I'm going to get to over here. And I will just say this is courtesy of somebody, we'll call them MS, and their people, because they did their revocation, got a letter back. All right. Now, I think I only got one letter one time. And I think it was like, yeah, this is frivolous, blah, blah, blah. And then they try to state one or two court cases where, and well done, legal department. But see, I speak legal. Yeah, I've been learning this for 40 years. I've been actually doing this longer than some of people have been in their legal departments. And it takes a long time to learn things on a legal level. So they are going to send back at times and potentially a letter. We're going to cover that letter and we're going to rebut pretty much everything on their letter. I'm not going to go through every single thing because they like to try to be thorough about everything. But here's a short version of it. There is no law that requires them to provide you with what's known as tax avoidance. Okay. And one, if you don't use their language, they don't know what you're talking about. You're going to sound crazy to them, but they know what you're talking about. But remember, the majority of the people who are going to see your letters aren't the legal department. They're just running the program. Your letter never made it to anybody on the top or in the legal department. You're dealing with a low-level functionary. Full disrespect intended. Um, so they're just running a program and they may or may not get it right. But if they see a letter, the first person gets the letter and they go, it's one of these again. Send it over to the frivolous department. And then they go, yeah, respond to it with this. That's all. They're not validating your information. But what they did is they had their team sit down, okay, and create a letter to attempt to rebut your information. But as I'm looking here, and I'm going to double check right before I actually say this, the response letter is written by a director and integrity verification operations, which once again is not the legal department. The legal department didn't sign off on it. The legal department doesn't make the law. And the Internal Revenue Code it's a code for U.S. citizens and people who are taxpayers. So, as I said in one of my other videos, the first thing I would do is um, rebut the whole "you calling me a taxpayer." If I respond back to them, I'm going to say, as a non-taxpayer, see, they're assuming the close. They're assuming that, like the guy at the bar, if I buy a girl enough drinks, she'll get drunk enough, and then she's going to come home with me. That's what they're doing. Just like a police officer when they knock on your car window, tell you to pull over or get out of the car, something that they, depending on the scenario, may or may not have the legal and definitely usually not the lawful ability to do so. What they're doing is they're assuming the sale, they're assuming the close. They're saying, well, if you don't rebut it, then you must be. Gotcha. Okay. So you always have to rebut everything that they're going to call you, and if you've done everything the correct way. So, in speaking with well, we'll just say I may or may not have access to some people in some high places and some normal places and some low places, but places nonetheless. So, they want you to play the game. And the reason why they don't like this is because this represents that what they're doing is not fraud, but it's not a liked thing. And if enough people learn these things, they're going to have to shift and change the system, and it's going to have to be in our favor because if they make enough noise, then they're going to say, "Well, we're thinking about overhauling the whole system." Okay, or they're going to have to get rid of it and do something different, or they're going to have to modify it. And then once they wake up, if they wake up enough people, then people like you and me and whoever else who watch these videos are going to be like, "Well, I don't want to pay tax in the first place." But I get it. Well, we do need to have money from somewhere. Tariffs. Um, because we used to have tariffs way back in what the 30s, before the 30s or whatever else. And so everybody else used to pay for our country to be great. And then they said, "Oh, we'll give you guys a break to do business with us. So through the tariffs, and we'll just put the tax on the people." That's what's going on. As far as whether you guys like Trump or Biden, I really don't care. I couldn't care less about either one of them in all actuality. But it's certain things obviously will have an effect on us and industries, but everything already does anyway. It's like being used to the normal pain of this boyfriend or girlfriend, and then you're like, well, why should I leave them and go to this new person? Because they're probably just gonna, cause me pain and whatever else. Same way, and at least I know this person. Yeah, that's the kind of mind state and mental delusion that is what they enjoy. Because if you stay where you're at and you continue to keep getting what you're getting, that's the definition of insanity. All right. So, as always, guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Make sure you hit that bell, like, and subscribe. And as always, support me on my secondary YouTube channel, which is the Badwolf Media channel. It may change to the Badwolf Unlimited. Not sure yet. We'll see. But thank you to Ramen and other people out there who send in donations. Also, a shot goes out to the Salty Straw Man. Thank you for sending people my way and mentioning me. Um, and as always, if you guys want to be a part of the news letter, that's on Black Site 32. You can sign up for it there. And as always, guys, there's tons of free files on the first free document page and the second free document page. And just to irk the people out there, the one or two who don't like me talking about donations, please feel free to send in donations. I get a kick out of it, even if it's $5 or $20. I mean, whatever else it is. It's, you know, probably get less than 10 a month. For those people who are like, "Oh, you spend 5 minutes talking about donations." Well, yeah, who doesn't want to get paid or tipped? I mean, what are you, the kind of person that doesn't tip your bartender or your table servicer? No? Okay, well, then I guess it is what it is. But yet you're here watching all the videos for free, but I'm not supposed to. Okay, let's move on. So, with that being said, I'm going to read over the letter and we're going to cover what they really mean when they say this. You have to understand or overstand that they don't have an obligation to teach you about anything private or tax avoidance unless you ask for the specific thing. But how are you supposed to ask for the specific thing when you don't know the words? Your fault. Then sounds like you're stupid and you're part of the public, and so we'll give you public things. See, private things and these remedies that they always have to have. Every agency has a type of remedy, but if you don't know what to call it or what to ask for, they're definitely not obligated to give it to you. But if you ask for it and they don't give it to you, then you can use it against them. And that also brings me to another point of law. If the law is so written where it doesn't specifically detail what you're talking about, and some judges may differ, but they can't hold it to you. Okay. So it's like this. If they only talk about oranges, and say, for instance, they don't talk about nationals. It's because they don't control nationals. But that doesn't mean that nationals can just go out there and commit crimes. But what does talk about the national or the state citizen? The Constitution. Each department talks about the specific people they can control and then the ones that they can't. But if that person who they can't does certain things, then they're obligated to handle that scenario. But in general, they're not the controllers because you can only control what's yours. Nationals own themselves. U.S. citizens are owned. But nationals, if you call yourself a national or a state citizen, and by which I mean that there's really no other legal term other than like non-resident, non-citizen U.S. national, non-national, um, they interface with these, but they don't control those unless you're doing something dangerous. So once again, nationals control themselves, but you're supposed to be a non-belligerent, non-combatant, which means that though you're operating under the Constitution, not necessarily the state's laws, okay, that doesn't mean that you can just do whatever you want to do, speed and this and that and whatever else. Because anytime you're in danger of somebody's life or personal property, or have done damage or deny somebody of their personal and private rights, etc., then you have waived your ability to be private as a non-belligerent, non-combatant. You've waged war. All right. Let's take a look at what we have here. I would put the letter up on the screen, but their information has not been blocked out. So to protect them in that, I will not show you their address. And as always, guys, if you guys do have some inside tips, tricks, techniques, and whatever else, you can feel free to send them to me. So make sure it's nothing that's going to get you in trouble, especially not me. Um, Thank you for those people who've already provided certain informations like that. And all right. So IRS, Department of Treasury. All right. Now understand that the IRS has the ability to tax taxpayers. And if you do something that's considered a taxable event, then you have allowed them to subjugate you into through joinder, okay, into their world because certain things are theirs. You generating compensation is not generally taxable unless you on your forms have put down that you are taxable. I'm a U.S. citizen, blah, blah, blah. I would put down that I'm either a national state citizen or a Floridian, New Yorker, Californian. All right. At your job on those documents when you're filling them out, fill it out the appropriate way. I've already made videos on how to fill it out the numerous ways. If you make an election, which is what this is, and you will be taxed, but they're only supposed to tax within their zip codes. But understand this, because you're sitting right here, there is an invisible layer, the zip code layer, but it's not mandatory. And really, it's for federal citizens, which are also U.S. citizens. Do you have to use it? No, there's actually no law. But what they did was they said, well, this will help your mail get there faster. They've been grooming you. They've been grooming all of us to utilize those benefits and privileges. I mean, once you use the benefits and privileges, gotcha bit. That's it. It's literally what they're doing. Now, they never said you had to, but they also never said you didn't have to. But when people asked what about that, they said, well, this will help you move these packages and things a little faster. In today's world, it it does help, but like a day, maybe. Ooh, I got my bills quicker. Now, when they're conversing with you through the mail, your mailbox has been registered to them as a internal but yet external agency. So it's looked at as an extension of being inside of one big business. Just means that you're a franchise or a satellite location. Is what they're doing with the mail. All right. So yes, some people have gotten rid of their mailboxes and whatever else. I've been pondering it. I have a secondary mailbox for my nation. You can unregister it, have them remove it, or you can remove it and then not receive any more mail. But then you want to make sure that everything that you need to come is going to go there. Yes, of course, your normal stuff like UPS or whatever else will put inside your doors like they used to do in the old days or whatever else, or somewhere near your front step. But once again, that's if you decide to do it or not. It's all up to you. So here we are looking at, it says frivolous return program stop 4450 Ogden, Utah, blah, 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 in response to a letter. Dear taxpayer, once again, if I'm going to respond back, I'm going to say uh, non-taxpayer on the top, or I'm going to put it underneath my name in the bottom. And remember, I already made a video on tax avoidance versus tax evasion. And we already showed that in the video. But because this is going to be a longer video, let's just go ahead and pull it up real quick for all the naysayers. I love shutting down the trolls out there. All right, here we go. All right, so IRS, IRC, Internal Revenue Code, and I'm going to put tax avoidance versus evasion. I think it's like 35.1.1.1, something like that. All right, so IRS, the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. All right, so this is one of their worksheets. Let's just see what they have to say here. Your role as a taxpayer. So they're assuming tax avoidance, an action taken to lessen tax liability and maximize after-tax income. See how they like to say it? Now, what's interesting is they don't have a time frame on when this was done. So things like that, where there's no official stamp, name, code, numbers, all that makes me a little uncomfortable. Even though this could all be internal, but still, yeah, if it's internal, to me, it's trash. Stand your ground. I don't want to get a little thought communication. So since there's summary, the U.S. income tax system is based on the idea of voluntary compliance. Period. Period. Right here. This is their memo. Look, it says irs.gov, understanding taxes. So that's it. But now let's go on to see, because now they have to try to minimize the very thing that they're talking about, right? So under this system, it is the taxpayer's responsibility to report all income. Okay. Now here's why they're right so far, because they use the word taxpayer, U.S., and they use the word income. Income means taxable compensation. But if it's truly taxable, then yes, you have, if it's their product, it is. You generating compensation, even at general employers, is not generally taxable. It's not. It's quasi because you're making it, it has the ability to be taxed if you make an election. Now, like your 401k and your bond stocks, stuff like that, those are their products. Those are taxable things, generally. Okay. So you just read here. It says it's based on voluntary compliance. It's this is, but here it goes, tax evasion is illegal. And that's correct. If you are just evading taxes, meaning you're trying to possibly, now if you have illegal motives in mind to not pay, then yes, you're doing tax evasion is illegal. If you are trying to not pay the correct way, then that's tax avoidance. You can claim certain deductions, credits, and adjustments. It says it right here in the worksheet. So let's go back. Okay, so here somebody's got the code in. I want it from the IRS. So let's see. Oh, they want you to take a quit or a gain. No, I don't want that. Here, let me remove the code. Maybe I don't have the code right. Let's see here. I don't want their PDF. Oh, it's funny. Now they won't let me. Let's try here. Definitions. Ah, it was 25, not 35. My bad. I was in the wrong section. All right, yeah, 25.1.1.3.3. And I quote, avoidance of tax is not a criminal offense, period. Taxpayers have the right to reduce, avoid, meaning not get hit by the train, or minimize their taxes by legitimate means. So, wait a minute. If you're telling me everybody must pay taxes, all U.S. citizens, keyword U.S. citizen, must pay taxes on their income, keyword is income, then why would they possibly have the ability for you to avoid it 100%, not just reduce or minimize? They said avoid. That means pay zero. So there are methods then to not pay taxes. People, you can adjust it. I just showed you their worksheet, their website. But as I'm going to read in this letter, they have to do their best to get the taxes from you. They're pimping. They've been pimping since pimping was pimping. Now, whether you have male or female hoes, it's up to you. I don't condone any pimping, but you get what I'm saying. So, from their perspective, they have to keep pimping. They know they can't pimp everybody, but if they don't try, if they don't take your revocation of election and try to negate it, well, you're going to start to tell other people. And when you tell other people, they're going to start to have problems because everybody's going to be avoiding it. Now, as I've said before, President Trump, if you're watching, RFK, if you're watching, Elon Musk, if you're watching, my theory, my thought for this country would be is to create a mandatory 10% tax. Everybody, businesses, whatever else, all that. It would then solve a lot of problems. The average taxpayer would then be keeping 20 some percent of his check instead of the 30 he's got to break off. It's to keep 20 some percent. Most people would be okay with that. The Bible talks about tithing 10%. So for Bible people, that works. Businesses that are paying $0 because they know how to do the stuff that I know how to do would then have to pay 10%. The amount of money that those businesses are making, if they pay 10%, it would more than cover the amount of money that we, the regular people, are coming up with out of our normal daily, weekly, monthly checks. And still yet, I would still have then a low tariff, something reasonable. They all these countries have been doing business with us for so long, they got it sweet. Yeah, you had to pay nothing. A little shipping, and then they're good. Well, guess what? You want to do business with us? We're the number one consumers in the world of all these things. You got to pay the piper, pimpin'. So a reasonable tariff on a number of different industries, 10% mandatory across the board for people and businesses who don't know how to or want to or believe in any of my tax avoidance techniques, though I'm sought after by multi-millionaires. So it's funny when some brokey or some half-stepper wants to come at me some type of way about this information when I've beaten lawyers, judges, attorneys, got consuls by multi-millionaires constantly, but you feel some type of way or think you got it or you want to be against me on your own little YouTube channel. I just think it's cute. It's cute. But with all of that, we're still doing this. You don't think I would have been gotten a knock on the door and, hey, sir, you're no, it's because I'm using their stuff. I'm not having you guys doing anything that's illegal. It literally says right there on the IRS site. I showed it to you. Tax avoidance is not illegal when you do it the proper way. And to those HR departments out there, I just want you guys to know too, if you guys don't call the IRS and allow people to do what they're lawfully entitled to do as nationals and state citizens, which is work there and to make a claim that unless you can show that it's criminal what they're doing, you have to allow them to make that claim. Otherwise, it's a lawsuit to your company. Police officers, some are my friends out there, some maybe not so much, but to all of you, it's a lawsuit and they can prosecute you personally. Yeah, you have qualified immunity to some degree, unless you're denying somebody of their constitutional rights. Then your qualified immunity goes out the window. So I'm not saying these things to be a dick. I want to bring my America back, and I want you guys to know how to operate properly. It's just like we don't know how to do great commerce. You guys don't know how to do great commerce. And yet we're all Americans, or we're supposed to be. And the system controlled by people over in Europe sitting back in their big houses, puppeteering all of you guys on a day-to-day basis, giving you scraps and having us fight amongst each other, those days are over. All right. So it says, in this reply to your correspondence, May 30th, 2024, we've determined that the arguments you raised are frivolous and have no basis in law. Federal courts have consistently ruled against such arguments and imposed significant fines for taking such frivolous positions. So we know this letter is a liar. They're lying. I literally just showed you from their website, which proves that this letter is a lie. So how do they do this? What they're doing is they're trying to scare people into paying taxes. You know, hey, IRS, section 25.1.1.3.3. And this person who did the revocation of election, they weren't making arguments. They were stating federal facts. Supreme Court opinions, which is law. So you guys are lying. If you persist in sending frivolous correspondence, we will not continue to respond to it. Our lack of response does not convey any agreement or acceptance. Also, it's not like they've been watching my videos. And actually, by law, IRS, it actually does. But you do have the ability to tell people, hey, we got your letter. And if you know how to operate correctly, then do so. That's all. So this is actually a threat, and you guys could be sued for it. And because you are a public agency, right? You guys are U.S. Yeah, then you have to respond to the American people. That's the law. They have the legal right to know what's going on. You telling them not to, well, then they can sue you for it. It's amazing how much people don't know about the law. But okay, this letter advises you of the legal requirements for filing. Yeah, there are legal requirements for filing. And paying a federal individual income tax. Yes, if you are a U.S. citizen, you're not doing taxable things. Then you don't have to. Per your website, tax avoidance. But if it's a taxable thing, then yes, you need to pay. So let's go on. There are people out there who encourage others to violate our nation's tax laws. Oh, there might be, but then there's people who are teaching them how to do tax avoidance, like your your website says, IRS code 25.1.1.3.3. Tax evasion is not illegal, but you're contradicting yourself here. But are they? They're carefully wording their letter to say that yes, some people are tax exempt and some are taxable. We only focus on the taxable. So if you don't want to F with us, then fill out things the proper way, but we're not going to mention it here because your revocation didn't ask us about avoidance of taxes. The revocation makes a statement. Here's why I don't have to pay taxes. A new modern version of the revocation could be, hey, IRS, underneath section 25.1.1.3.3, I would like to learn more about tax avoidance. What are all of the structures that I can formulate through your corporation, which cannot be the master of any human being unless by waiving knowingly my rights, Constitution. What do you have all available? Please provide with all the forms and all information available in your database. Failure to provide this function as per your job, per the law, may result in seeking legal, financial, court. Yeah, you get it. We encourage you to look at this publication. So once again, so legally, even though you sent in your revocation, because you didn't ask the question, you made a statement, which was fact. They're doing their best to rebut the fact. So let's take a look and see what they have here. Let's go to the next sheet. I mean, they sent like 4 or 5 sheets really hounding that under the Privacy Act of 1974, we must tell you that our legal right to ask for information is Internal Revenue Code section, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, if you're a taxpayer, we ask for information to carry out internal revenue laws of the United States corporation. And you are required to give us this information. We may give the information to the Department of Justice for civil and criminal litigation. Yeah, well, we can litigate against you too. Other federal agencies, states, cities, and the District of Columbia for use. Well, why do you have to give it to the District of Columbia? They have their own laws. They're not a U.S. state. They have their own constitution. Interesting. Corporation. If you do not provide this or provide fraudulent information, yeah, so once again, they really want to throw down and scare people with information. They talk about the penalties. And they give their addresses if you want to request their policy and procedure. Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Policy and procedure for internal members. Procedure, how to get something done. That's them. Policy, police, set of codes and rules for the people who are members of it. Request your personal or business tax records. Okay, let's go to the next one. Mr. La Rochelle, director. So no first name, no last name, because they're starting to try to hide that because they're afraid. Um, People like our boy Luigi, who oft or unalived somebody. Not that I condone any of that. I'll keep my personal thoughts from this professional moment. But yeah, they're so they don't want to use their name, their full name, so they can't easily be found because people are starting to wake up and go, you know what? Might be time to do something about that. And as always, guys, I do not recommend taking the law into your own hands. But here's what's interesting. So then they send, why do I have to pay taxes? How are your tax dollars used to benefit the, pay attention to the words, citizens of the United States? But before they said U.S. citizens, because those are separate things. So the citizens of the United States means everybody under the umbrella, which means everybody under the umbrella, under the term citizens of the United States, means everybody. Federal, citizen, state, citizens, residents, non-residents, green, everybody who's, if you are here legally or born here naturally, you are under the term citizen of the United States. We're all family. If I take you, put you right here, and you, he or she or whatever, and your last name is Smith, but I make you an honorary member of the Lovett family, you're in the Lovett family, right? Not blood though, but in the family. That's what the term citizen of the United States means. But if you choose to not regard yourself as just, I'm all hodgepodge, I'm the same as everybody else, which then means that you're a US citizen. I specifically want to be regarded as private. So I've got these signs up here, okay, which are on my house, which means revocation of implied license. Implied license means that if everybody around you is this, we assume you're that too. When a police officer pulls over everybody, well, you guys are all probably guilty. You're hanging together. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No, no, I'm not. I have no legal association and connection with them. So, and then there's also what's known as lowest common denominator. So, lowest common denominator means if everybody in there are D bags and you're the only good guy, they're gonna assume you're a D bag too, because everybody around you literally has a record and they're all D bags. Not that people have records or D bags. You get what I'm saying? But here then they make a broad generalization. All the citizens of the United States must pay their fair share. And they are sanctioned. The United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 clause states that Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, okay, duties, impose, excise, and pay the debts and provide common defense and general warfare of the United States corporation. So they were granted their powers, okay? Congress has delegated, so Congress gave the IRS the responsibility of administering the tax laws known as the Internal Revenue Code. So they made a law that says you can collect taxes, and then the IRS created a code. That is not the same thing as a constitutional law. It's a law that gave them the ability to write codes. So, sources of taxable income are identified under Code 61. Gross income defined. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that. So, once again, they use the term gross income. Okay. And then it says on the next page, don't fall for these arguments. Constitutional myths. Form 1040 violates the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. So technically, yeah, but the way their legal department is writing this up is you have to understand that if you are taxable and you make an election to be, if you are their property, then you are taxable, period. However, the rest of us, if you do a taxable event, it must be reported. That's correct. If you're operating privately, you understand that what they call as gross income for private citizens is compensation of labor, and it's not taxable per the Constitution, then they have you. Okay. Or in this case, they don't have you. So it says here, the filing and paying of taxes voluntary. They said that's a myth. Well, you're wrong. Your website just said the opposite of this. Your pamphlet just said it's voluntary, so they're lying. Literally right here in their IRS document that they send out to people says the filing and paying of taxes voluntary. comma. Now, if I was to look at this legally, the fact that they put a comma, it said commas usually are supposed to be like and. So you're saying and or the code doesn't apply to me because I'm neither a government employee nor a resident of a sovereign state. And but here it says Internal Revenue Code myths. So they're not saying quoting any law here. What they're doing is they're saying this is internally said. So that's fraudulent. You're not naming any, and you're not stating a law or even an internal code. You're just talking. And it negates section 25.1.1.3.3 of your own code on your website. So which one is it? Lowest common denominator says, hey, don't pay. So then it's don't pay because you're mixing the facts. But we know that your website is the true code, and you guys are lying in your pamphlet. If I was any one of you guys, I would be suing them over this little pamphlet right here. But they would say, well, the way it's written, the filing and the payment, it's just internally we say that. Right. Truth. The term voluntary compliance means that each of us is responsible for filing a tax return when required. That's the key word. See it? See how they talked all that bullshit. And then in the next sentence, it said, well, the truth of this IRS myth. Okay. So what is a myth? A myth is something you can't even prove. The myth of Atlanta. I can prove more about the city of Atlantis than I can about their internal revenue code myth that they talk about internally. That means internally. That there's no. It's not written in their law, and it's not written outside of that. So this is just hearsay, conjecture. But then it goes the truth about it, and then it says, but when it's required and paying the correct amount, frivolous credit myths. Okay, I didn't. This is something new for me. African and Native Americans can claim a special tax credit as reparations for slavery. No, that one is trash. You guys can't. But y'all seriously out here doing that? No, you can't. No, it's that thing. Compensation myths. Wages, tips, and other compensation received for personal services are not income because there is no taxable gain when a person exchanges money for labor. And okay, hold on, let me see. It says truth. This argument has been consistently dismissed by the courts. Sources of taxable income are identified. Okay, it says Congress has determined that all income, once again, income, that's what they're basing it all on. So the fact that when you get your check and it does say income, they can say, well, your check says income. So this is a half truth because if you allow them to put on your check that it's income, okay, instead of just compensation, a lot of places won't let you change it. They don't know any better and they don't want to do something special for you. But when you are paid, it is private. They haven't quoted one actual law where it says you have to pay. They haven't because there isn't one law. Let's go back here. Let me just go back to make sure, just double check. What it says here is the Constitution allows for them to collect within their jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction would be anybody who is either a U.S. citizen or a for-profit corporation or a public person in office. It's also why they put gross income on your check. One could just put income on there and argue that, but let's see what else they have here. What does the IRS do to address willful non-compliance? So willful non-compliance, once again, that is you saying, yeah, I'm just not going to pay because I don't want to pay. It's not how it works. You have to opt out. And they've got what they call the taxpayer bill of rights. What I notice on here, nowhere on here does it mention section 25 .1.1.3.3 tax avoidance. Hmm. It's almost like they're fraudulently or misrepresenting. I mean, I showed it on the video, so even if they were to change or try to take it down, they can't now. It's up for all of eternity, and everybody's going to share it and has shared it. So what they have here on the next page is that you have the right to examinations, appeals, collections, and refunds. Once again, nothing about that code. So then we wonder why, when we talk to some of these asshats or we send some things off, they don't know what we're talking about because they don't know their own code. Same thing with police officers. I give them the code of the state and whatever else on uh, foreign vehicle registration. They don't know. They have to call their supervisor in. And that's when me and the supervisor have a good old talk and he sees things my way because he doesn't want to be party to a lawsuit. They don't know their own codes. Constitution also states anywhere where somebody is depriving you or denying you of your rights, you have the right to ignore them with impunity. Now, that doesn't mean that just because, oh, I wanted to jaywalk, I should be able to do that. What they're saying is that if somewhere in there you truly believe that your rights have been violated and they're constitutionally protected, you have the right to ignore them. Because the Constitution also talks about your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to own property free and clear, tax exempt, private, all of that. But these people, the IRS, they work under the Constitution. The Constitution grants them to do what they're doing with their own people who are compliant. But you cannot remove our free will, our liberty, and our rights. So let's take a look at Internal Revenue Code 61, gross income defined. Let's see what we can find. Once again, just because I'm a DICK, I want to share that which they don't want you to see. And they put under the word avoidance. Who's thinking about tax avoidance? Like we would normally put how to stop taxes, end taxes, how do I not pay taxes anymore? And you won't find anything because you don't see any of that in here. But what do they use? Avoidance. Once again, do you see this? Avoid. If you avoided your baby mama, you didn't see her, right? If somebody swung on you and you avoided being hit in the face and your mouth meat, then you didn't get hit. So zero. That's zero contact. So zero tax liability right here. Reduce, avoid, or minimize. As long as you do not conceal or misrepresent. And they got tons of stuff here on fraud. Willfulness is a common element of tax crimes. Willfulness is defined as voluntary, intentional violation of a known legal duty. So when I read that argument over there before, where it said willfulness of non-compliance, they were basically saying you voluntarily did not want to do something when you have a legal duty, which means the contract. That's why some scenarios you have an obligation. All right. Now they got tons and tons of stuff on evasion, felony, fraud. Everything you can think of. Look at that. And what, 2 sentences on avoidance? Y'all seen that, right? Should I go back up? No. Well, let's see here. Yeah, 2 sentences. 2 literal sentences that prove me right with their own codes. How you like me now? Watch out now. All right. Let's not be petty. Let's move on. Okay. So let's see here. Um, gross income defined. What was it? 60, section 61. Now, here's another thing you guys have to understand too. People might be like, oh, Betty's not going to find anything and this, that, and the other. Here's something that even I kind of stepped over, even when in concerns to the gold fringe flag under AR 840-10. If you're looking up and you can find what you're looking for, the definition, underneath whatever agency, then it belongs to that agency. The use of the gold fringe flag or the gold fringes on the U.S. flag makes it not American, but U.S. And it's under AR 840-10. AR stands for Army Regulations. Then it's an Army flag. And anywhere where that flag with the gold fringes on is then the Army, which from my educationally speaking, my overstanding, are our armed forces. Yes, they're in the American family, but they are their own bubble. They have their own law. So they're US, but they're not American. But you can be an American and join it and be a US citizen. So in us looking up the term gross income means that the IRS owns the term gross income. So if I need to fight them, I'm going to argue that it's not gross income. But let's see what they have here as a definition. Once again, it's their document, but no official headlines or numbers. And so it's internal communication. We are aware that some taxpayers, once again, attempt to reduce or eliminate their federal income tax by claiming that compensation received in exchange for person is not taxable income. So what's wrong with this statement? First of all, they're assuming you're a taxpayer. That's the problem right here. These taxpayers often avoid their federal income tax liability by failing to file, okay, because they're assuming that you are a taxpayer. They often furnish forms W-4 employee withholding allowance certificates on which they claim excessive withholding allowances. Okay, so that could be considered fraud. So we jumped into them saying, well, some taxpayers are attempting to reduce or eliminate, which they already said in their own code, 25.1.1.3.3. You can do this. But then they jump down here and say, well, they're claiming excessive withholding allowances or claim complete exemption from withholding. But this is also your W-4. And depending on how you filled out that W-4 as a U.S. citizen or a national, then they could be right in here. Any argument that such compensation is not taxable has no merit and is frivolous. Well, this is not completely accurate. But see, what they're doing is that whole lowest common denominator. They're saying if we can find any mistakes you've made in your process, just like and I haven't said this in a long time, my dog shit cake theory. If you put a little tiny piece of dog shit in your batter of cake, the whole cake is tainted. This is what they do. If they can find any mistakes you've made in there and how you present yourself, what you're claiming, then it's fake, it's frivolous, and you're a subject, or you may have to argue it out in court. Once again, here, facts. Taxpayer A. So yeah, they're already starting out that you're a taxpayer. So this is them saying you're already guilty. The taxpayer failed to do, well, yeah, you're guilty. The taxpayer guilty. So I'm going to argue this right here. What contract do we have? I've rescinded all of that. I filled out my things the proper way. I updated my withholding agent. But if you don't do it correctly, and they keep using the same old punk ass line from the 16th Amendment, we have the right to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived amongst the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Yeah, this is true from taxpayers, the public person. So what they're saying here is that anywhere where income, because they own the word income, they don't own the word compensation. That's why they don't use it on their forms. Incomes, gross income. If you allow them to call your compensation that and call you a taxpayer, then you must be. If I think about it, if I'm on the street and I'm like, yeah, what's up, my G? What's up? Then you must be. I hear other court cases where I'm assuming people have failed in their tax arguments. And this is okay. So this is federal circuit court. Okay. So people did fail. Why did these people probably fail? Because they weren't arguing the correct things or they did their revocations wrong. You can't just not pay. You can't over put discounts and things that aren't real on there. It says every court, according to this court case, issues an unequivocal rejected the argument that wages are not income because wages can be income. They can be, depending on how you classify yourself when you started your job. They own the word income. Like I said, up here, they said, oh, compensations. Yeah, you can say compensations because they don't own it. But the problem with it is that when you say compensation and private, they don't like it. They say, well, he generated income. Because most of these people probably, when you look at their W-4s or whatever else, W-2s and whatnots, they had them all filled out as U.S. citizens. And then at the bottom of your tax paper, what do you always sign? Your name. I swear under penalty of perjury that I'm a U.S. citizen. I would be crossing out the term U.S. citizen and putting national. I'd be putting neither non-resident or you could put U.S. national, put state citizen, Floridian. All those little things are you agreeing to what you are. See, all this jazz right here that they're saying means nothing when their own code says that tax avoidance is an acceptable thing. All they're doing here is they're really, really, really like it's like them putting lasers through your whole house and telling you to walk through without hitting one laser. And they have the right to do that because it's their game. Income is their game. So let's see what gross income is. So once again, this means that gross income is theirs. I didn't have any gross income. What does gross mean by itself? What does income mean? What does it mean together? Gross income means all income. Okay, well, then I didn't have any income from whatever source derived, including but not limited to the following. Once again, all these things are their words. And this is not accurate right here because if you have a whole life policy, it's exempt. So there's that. Income from an interest in an estate or trust. Yeah, if it's a public trust, once again, gross income. And then what are we looking up? This is inside their world. These are all of their words. Royalties, dividends, annuities. Life insurance is something made by them. Pension, something made by them. Using the word income. Gross income. You see it now? Income, income, income. Now up here, first one. They had to put that in there first. Compensation for services. Okay, so hold on. Services, service, to be in the service, it's a military term, so they own that. So compensation for services. I'm not getting compensation for services. I'm getting private compensation, including fees. Fees are their word too. Commission. It's a branch from commercial, commerce. That's theirs. Fringe benefits. Fringe on the flag. Benefits. Fringe benefits. And that notice it doesn't just say benefits, it says fringe benefits because they don't own the word beneficiary, though beneficiary is in the trust and we are held in trusts. So the benefits of the fringe or the outskirts of the benefits and similar items. So all of these are their words. They don't own compensation, but they own services. Internal revenue service. And when you look these things up, they're in their code. See if I can find anything else real quick. Let's jump back to the screen. Once again, these are their internal memos, not law. This taxpayer claims to be exempt. Yeah, well, churches are exempt. Well, one here, this dumb, well, they're using their term, sovereign citizen. This would never be one of us. We've already debunked the whole you We've already debunked and actually using the 4852 to substitute for the W-2 is a redual. We've seen this. They've already paid people out for this. So this is another lie. And then they try to throw in some the same person may be at the same time a citizen of the United States and a citizen of the state. So this is kind of interesting. The United States versus Crankshaft, Shank, said the same person may be a citizen of the United States and a citizen of a state. So there are two different main statuses. However, both of these can be taxable. Just because you're a state citizen doesn't mean you're not taxable, because you can do a taxable event. But because they don't own the state citizen, if you don't do a taxable event, you're not taxable. The U.S. citizen is always owned unless they create a pass through. Section 7701A9 of the Internal Revenue Code states that the term United States, when used in a geographical sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. Some people may argue that some of this is an interpretation, but see, here's the thing with that, though, too. The law states that interpretation of the law, if you can prove it to the judge, if you can convince the judge, you're good. You have to convince them. The judge may have his own ideas on it, but you need to convince him. Prove to him without a shadow of a doubt what you're saying is legit. Here's my problem. It says the Internal Revenue Code is the law. Yeah, that's internal law for the IRS and their people, things they own and control. They can't tax foreign things unless that foreign thing is playing with their taxable stuff. So here, uh, Congress chartered the Second Bank of the United States. Although the bank was largely privately owned, it was incorporated by Congress and by Congress. So here's their problem. You were shot down because it was incorporated. Income tax. Incorporated. Corp. Corporated. That means the corp is body. Orated is to function or animated. Incorporation. So you went into their stuff and they can tax you. Done. I'm not going to go through all of this, but once again, look, corporations. It says individuals. So this is very misleading because individuals, we would like to believe, means living natural people. But here's the thing, even living natural people are subject to taxes if you're doing something taxable. Apps, corporations were the first things to be taxed. They are really the only things that should be taxed because they're for profit. Nonprofit and foreign things are not taxable generally, but they can do taxable events. This is why people don't like to battle the code because it can be complex in reading it. All right. I think that's about it, guys. I think we covered it. I mean, even if you guys don't want to believe anything I have to say, that is totally fine. Matter of fact, vet the information for yourself. As always, I don't want anybody to be like, "Whoa, the guy on TV or YouTube, blah blah blah," because you have to be able to. Hold on a second, getting some emails as always. So basically, it's like this: you've seen it for yourself. No special editing, no this, that, or the other. Literally, literally, IRS code 25.1.1.3.3 tax avoidance says, and this is why, like, all these people don't understand because it's literally two sentences and thousands of lines of code, but it's there because by law they have to have it there. It's just, are you able to find it? And we have. Wolf.